Hello there. Welcome in. Great to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or the apps of those two fine radio stations. And they are both free to download. They're both free to use. And you can listen to not just this show, but any of the shows that you enjoy on either of those radio stations. Of course, there is a new way to consume the show that is sweeping the nation, and it is watching anywhere you scroll at Extra Sports 1300, at 740 KVOR, or you can follow me on social media and watch the show on a daily basis at Gingerly Tweets on X, at Gingerwatch on Instagram. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics, I assure you. I will have a guest, and his name is Juan Tejada, and he plays for your hometown Switchbacks, and I'm very excited to have him on in less than 20 minutes after a big night from him and a big night from the boys this weekend in Tulsa. They play tomorrow night, by the way, in San Antonio. But the rest of the time, it's you and me. 719-247-1313. You can call or text in your thoughts, or if you're watching on the aforementioned live stream of the show, you can just simply drop a comment right there. I hate everything about this Giannis trade. I hate it from every conceivable perspective on this. First of all, it was a way better basketball trade if Giannis ends up in Boston. So let me start with Giannis in Boston. Okay, specifically Boston. Giannis Antetokounmpo would give you exactly what you need, which is a star player that has no interest whatsoever in shooting threes. The Boston Celtics have a three-point shooting disease, and they need more guys on the floor that do not suffer from that disease. And putting Giannis with Jason Tatum and Derek White would almost assuredly make the Boston Celtics the favorite to come out of the East next year. And you would put an end to a tenuous situation, which is Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And now you are in a situation, if you're Boston, where now you have to trade Jaylen Brown, and you will not get a player as good as Giannis Antetokounmpo. So if this was all about Hugo Gonzalez, then Brad Stevens, one of the best GMs in the league, you messed up. Just give them Hugo Gonzalez and get the deal done. So I hate it for Boston. I hate it for Giannis for much the same reason. It would be a better basketball fit with him being in Boston. He'd have a better chance of winning in the immediate future in Boston. So he essentially leaves Milwaukee to go to a team that now with him is no better than the team he left. And let me make that clear. The Miami Heat right now are not a good basketball team. Now, if you're Miami, I get it. You take Giannis, you had nothing going for you anyway, except that fraudulent 83-point game from Bam Adebayo. So you take Giannis and you figure it out. Like, I understand that. But the Miami Heat have so far to go to be considered a championship contender because they weren't that good to begin with. So they had a lot of work to do. But again, you take the superstar and you try to figure it out. But Pat Riley, and I understand Pat Riley's done this with Shaq. He's done this with LeBron. I get it. It is a very different NBA. Which actually gets to one of the perspectives on this trade that I hate, or one of the aspects of this trade that I hate. But like Pat Riley, good on him. This is a very different NBA that he is dealing with. And what he did when LeBron James came to Miami is the reason why we're all suffering through the era of the second apron. It's a lot on Pat Riley. But if he thinks he can build a team, because remember, Miami, the last time they were relevant was when they played the Denver Nuggets, and both teams have been going down ever since. And then I don't like it from the Bucks' perspective either. Because to me, you get a player in Jaylen Brown, and you have your star that you can build around. And instead, you have the homecoming of Tyler Hero and a couple of draft picks that don't come up for another 5 years. And that's about it. So if I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fan, other than the fact of the feel-good story of Tyler Hero coming home to Milwaukee, what do I have to feel good about? What is tangible here for me to say we went from having one of the best players of his generation, and now we have Khalil Ware and draft picks that I can't, worry. I don't need to worry about for 4 or 5 years. And reportedly, it's because Jimmy Haslam, Jimmy Haslam, he owns another professional sports franchise, one that also has some trouble when it comes to competency, the Cleveland Browns. Right? So this guy is saying, I'm worried about Jaylen Brown leaving. So don't get the star player. Get a bunch of role players and draft picks that don't hit that you don't even get to use for 4 or 5 more years. That's Jimmy Haslam. I mean, you could say, Ryan, I disagree with you, but if you're siding with the guy who owns the Cleveland Browns. So choose your side wisely. I don't like the trade from anyone's perspective. The only light at the end of the tunnel I see is for Miami, right? That's where the hope is. That maybe one day Pat Riley can, in a league that has no free agency, they have no more draft picks, that they can somehow find backcourt players to go with Bam and Giannis. I mean, I like the pairing of Bam and Giannis. But in a league that requires you to have a bit more depth than just 2 players, I don't like the Miami Heat. They're not better than Boston. They're not better than New York. They're not better than Cleveland. So they got a lot of work to do. But at least they have Giannis. You figure it out, much like the Milwaukee Bucks figured it out, right? It's not like Milwaukee hasn't been banging their head up against a wall for how many years now since they won a title, trying to figure out how to build a championship contender around Giannis Antetokounmpo. It would have been so much better if Giannis would have went to Boston. And this is not anti-Miami Heat, although I feel like they're a little bit full of themselves with the Heat culture thing. But it's not I don't have anything against Miami. And I'm not a Celtics fan. I'm just saying the best thing for us, the people without the dog in the fight, I suppose, is that Giannis ends up in Boston. Because now the team that Giannis plays for, and by extension Giannis, are relevant. And it's something to get excited about. Instead, we got this trade, and you could put Miami and Giannis on the back burner for a year. And that's if Pat Riley can figure out a way to build a roster around him. At least Miami is irrelevant for a year. And I mean irrelevant like for you and I. For ESPN, they'll talk about Giannis for 24 hours straight and try to twist themselves into a pretzel, making providing the justification for Miami winning the NBA Finals this year. It's not as good of a trade, and I don't think it's a better trade for Milwaukee. I mean, it's the most stuff. Quantity over quality. But sometimes getting the most stuff is not actually the best trade. Getting Jaylen Brown is. But that saga is over. Now everyone has turned their attention to Anthony Edwards. He's going to be the next star that is going to be reported. In fact, it's already happened, that he's already disgruntled. And people will start projecting Anthony Edwards to join up with Giannis and Bam in Miami in the next couple of years. But the real predicament now is what Boston does with Jaylen Brown. Because there's no going back here, right? I mean, come on. There's no way that Jaylen Brown is going to be, this is the second time they've tried to trade him or made him available via a trade. They can't enter next season with Jaylen Brown. Come on. So what do they do with him? I look at a team like Atlanta, and I say Atlanta can give Boston some pieces that none of them will be on their own as good as Jaylen Brown, which, again, goes back to my point that you hate that Miami got Giannis if you're Boston for obvious reasons, but also because there's nobody you're going to acquire in a trade that's even close to as good as Giannis. And you're not going to get a player back in return for Jaylen Brown that's as good as Jaylen Brown. But you look at a team like Atlanta, and they can offer, I think, some interesting pieces to help the Boston Celtics. I mean, all hope is not lost with Boston. They could still go into next year as the favorite, but they have to trade Jaylen Brown. And when teams know that you got to trade a guy, the offers aren't going to be as good. And that's kind of what Milwaukee found out. They strung this along. They probably traded Giannis too late. And so they had to settle for what Miami was offering. But that's got to be the next big domino to fall. It's got to be Jaylen Brown going elsewhere. And we'll see. I heard this conversation. I didn't even really think this was on the table. Again, if you're a Bucks fan, man, would I love to hear from you today. I heard somebody earlier saying that Giannis ends up winning in all of this because he's not the bad guy. Excuse me? I mean, I think that you are grossly underestimating the basketball savvy of the Milwaukee market. Have they not followed this entire saga? There's no way Giannis is a good guy. Now, a good guy in the minds, he's a good human being, but not a good guy. If I'm a Bucks fan, I'm fully planning on booing the guy the first time he shows back up in Milwaukee. Like, I think part of the reason why the Bucks ended up trading Giannis too late is because Giannis wouldn't just do the thing. We know he wanted out of Milwaukee, and he just wouldn't, because he was trying to save face and trying to still be revered by Milwaukee Bucks fans. He wouldn't just say it. I want out. And because of that, the Milwaukee Bucks suffered in terms of the return they got for their generational star. And that's even more of a reason. I'm not saying years down the road. I'm somebody who has made the case that Carmelo Anthony should be honored by the Denver Nuggets. I'm not saying you hold a grudge forever, but the idea that Giannis comes out of this squeaky clean and Milwaukee fans are going to give him a hero's welcome the first time the Heat visit, I would be disappointed in Bucks fans. You got to boo the guy for at least 1 year, maybe two. Right? How about this? How about Milwaukee can celebrate Giannis and give him an ovation and acknowledge everything that he did for them? And there'll be a tribute video, right? But I'm saying, like, I don't know, a statue, a jersey retirement, whatever the case may be. Bucks fans should cheer Giannis in Milwaukee when Milwaukee gets to make the first pick that they got from Miami. I think that's fair. They got their first draft pick is in 2030 that they got in this deal. When that day comes and they get whatever 12-year-old that is near the top of the draft or whatever, if even Miami's not a good team by then they can cheer Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm not saying you hold on to the grudge forever. The guy delivered you a title. He's won multiple MVPs. But immediately forgiving and forgetting that Giannis slow played this thing because he didn't want to come off as the bad guy and your basketball team suffered because of it. This was not the Nuggets with Carmelo where James Dolan didn't understand how basketball works and had the Knicks immediately trade for him. This is less than the Bucks could have gotten if they would have been more decisive with it. But why would you be more decisive with it if Giannis isn't asking out? Right? That's the predicament. That's the tough position that Giannis put the Milwaukee Bucks in. He wouldn't ask for it, even though we know he wanted out of Milwaukee. And now the Bucks don't get as much in return. Take your reaction to the Giannis trade. And now we look to see what else happens tonight for draft night, including what the Denver Nuggets are going to do. A lot of NBA talk today, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Juan Tejada, a huge match for the Switchbacks in Tulsa. He'll join me to talk about it next. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. A big win for Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC down in Oklahoma over the weekend, and they'll turn right around to play probably an equally important match against San Antonio FC. Joining me now is the man who had a goal and an assist as the Switchbacks beat FC Tulsa 2-1. He is Juan Tejada. Juan, good to have you, man. How are you?
Hey Ryan, nice. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
My pleasure. So, can you confirm how big that win was for you guys? Pretty big one, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been unlucky, I think, in some of the results. I think we've been playing good football. We've been dominating games, but sometimes the results weren't coming our way, and just to be, down at half, and then if you were able to be inside that locker room, I think everybody had that belief, and we just said, let's go for it. I mean, we know what kind of players we have here. We have a lot of experience, so we know that we have the ability to come back, and that's what we came in with a kind of the same mindset, but just like let's go for it in the second half, and ended up coming back and getting the win away at Tulsa, which is always a difficult field to get a good result.
But you mentioned that what happened at the end of the first half has happened to you guys before, right? Probably you guys know better than any of us do some of the ways that goals have been scored against you guys out of nothing, and it's you guys dominate for the vast majority of the match, and it's just that one. So I guess it would be understandable if you go into that locker room and you're like, here we go again, but you're saying no, the belief was there despite you seeing kind of this movie play out before. What is it about this team that has that belief in the face of a difficult situation, conceding a goal there right before the half?
I mean, I think we all have, we know the kind of team that we have. We have special players in this team. We have great depth. And honestly, we've been going into every game thinking that we're going to get the win. And then we get to play and we kind of dominate most of the games, So it's just little moments of, that out of focus sometimes that, end up costing a goal against. But I think like we've been working really hard to kind of fix those little moments. And I'm so happy that, I mean, this team is just getting better every week, every day. So I know that we have a special group, and honestly, there was no doubt in the locker room that we were going to get a positive result there in Tulsa after, even as you said, we were down 1-0. And I think I saw something online that was saying that when they were up 1-0 at halftime, they have never lost since 2023, I think. Tulsa. So I mean, that's huge. That's obviously a huge result for us, and we just want to continue building that momentum going into Wednesday.
Absolutely. Juan Tejada, switchback striker, joining me here on Drive Time Sports. I talked with Alan today after you guys left training, and I just asked him, because it's not that the roster went a complete overhaul when Alan took over, but there are a few guys that went out and a few that came in. You obviously one of the ones who stayed. And I asked Alan, like, what is it about you, Juan Tejada, that embodies what he wants this team to be? And he called you the blueprint. He said that everything he wants everyone on the roster to be as a football player, but as a man, is based around you. When you hear that, and I'm sure he shared those thoughts with you before, Juan, what does that mean to you to have that kind of a vote of confidence from Alan?
Yeah, I mean, he has said that before to me, and I think that just shows, I think, the confidence he's put on me. And like I've said before, I just want to give that back to him. I think, like you said, from last year, there were some things that needed to be changed, and I think looking overall in this season, we're going in the right direction, and the people that are right now, Alan, you got Brad as well, and all the other stuff. They want to push this club where we all want it to be, which is, top positions of the Western Conference and just fighting for titles every single year. I think this is a incredible team. We got incredible fans. We got an incredible stadium, and I think we all want to, as I said, just be in the top positions and fighting every day, every year for a chance of a championship. And I think we're moving in the right direction for sure. And I appreciate those words, of course. And it's not only me. I think we've brought many players that have that hunger and encompasses that the values that a Switchback player should be.
Mm. But and I know you guys and know how good of human beings you guys are, but I watch you and I watch Aiden and I watch Brennan and I say, man, those are three guys that if I were a soccer player of any talent, which I am not, but if I was, I would hate playing against those guys. I mean, so you could be a great guy, but at the same time to your opponent, you could be, get under their skin a little bit. Is that something that you and the boys, because like I said, it's not just you, it's you guys really get into these guys and make it difficult? How much pride do you take in that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, every single guy is ready to fight for each other. And I think we enjoy that. We enjoy going into every game knowing that we're going to fight for each other. And sometimes, this game in the USL, you got teams that are going to be scrappy. We had an event that happened, in Tulsa, something specific that happened to Giannis. And honestly, I think, like, looking back, it's going to be such an important moment that something happened to Giannis, with a player from Tulsa and whatever is part of the game. But we all supported him. We went together at the end of the game, and we kind of like had a little fight after the game, and that just shows how everybody is together. I think, like, as I said, that's gonna be massive because we're all together in the same mindset. And I mean, I enjoy going out every single game, and 11 guys, 18, whatever, 24. we all have fighters in this team. And like Alan has said before, I think apart from the footballers, the human being that we are, and just the fighters, everybody has had their sacrifices to reach this point in their career. So we just want to be out there and have that hunger to get the wins.
Juan Tejada, my guest, you got a soccer match to watch here in an hour and a half, don't you?
I'm excited, man. I mean, it's the biggest event in world football. So I'm excited. I mean, my parents are visiting, so we're gonna watch it together, and then hopefully we can get a result. Panama is a small country. It's already an achievement for us to reach the World Cup. Soccer has been growing immensely in our country, so hopefully we get our point today here. A point or three, we don't know.
Yeah.
I always believe.
Get greedy.
Yeah,
You
I'm always, I'm always the hopeful guy. I always believe we're gonna get something, even though, and that's what's beautiful about football. You got the underdogs or anything. It's 11v11. Anything can happen, and it's just a ball, and we'll see. Always with the belief,
Absolutely. I mean, a goalkeeper that you're going to be facing in a couple weeks stood on his head the other day. Miami's keeper for Curacao. So, I mean, that's one thing and I love the expanded field. I mean, it's just, you have all the stars, right? Messi and I'm watching Harry Kane right now in studio, and that's great. But then you have these stories like Panama, like Cape Verde, like Curacao that are really shocking people that don't know them on a world stage. And it's just why it's unlike any other sporting event, because you played for your country when you were a bit younger. I'm curious, what's your best CONCACAF story? Because the legend of CONCACAF football it's big. So what was your best experience playing for Panama in CONCACAF?
For me, was scoring in the home stadium for sure. Everybody was watching, and you got friends, family, and we are playing El Salvador. It was the under 23s, but I think like that's something as a Panamanian myself, like scoring in front of the crowd and people. I think that's a moment that people will remember you always in Panama. Just they saw you in the stadium scoring a goal, so every time. I think it's easy for me because I have the hair, and so I'll be walking around the streets in Panama, and they always say, hey, like Juan Tejada, they call me El Tarzan sometimes there, and it's they always remember me from those times. But I mean, it's probably for me. I get goosebumps thinking like those times that I was, singing national anthem in front of people and ready to fight for my national team. So, but yeah, it's now from this other side, watching them from TV, it's the same. Like I'm just a Panamanian fan, and then I just want them to do good, and it's like you said it, man. Like it's soccer is it has unbelievable stories, and you mentioned Eloy Room, and I think that's also a testament of how much the USL has grown in
For sure.
the soccer as a whole in the US, and it's going to continue growing. I think that's a really good thing about it, and then the World Cup is showing us different things about different countries that you're not expecting.
Juan Tejada, my guest. So when you watch Panama at 5:00 this afternoon with your family, are you a fan that are you standing up the entire game? Are you calm? Are you just a nervous wreck? I mean, how is it to watch Panama with Juan Tejada?
Okay, I think sometimes I'm like, cold of emotions, but I think with football and Panama, it's just, it comes to me, I'm lively. I'm like suffering or living it. I enjoy, football is for me is one of the best things in life. And I just, every single play, I'm like, like, come on. That's me. I'm going to be all the way there, living it. And hopefully we can get that goal. We haven't gotten a goal in the World Cup yet and this year, so hopefully I can get jumping.
Right.
And yeah, that's it, man. It's gonna be a good one for sure.
Yeah. So gotta get a goal, at least one goal from Panama, get all 3 points, and then tomorrow night Juan Tejada gets a goal. Switchbacks get all 3 points against San Antonio. That sound like a plan, Juan?
That sounds amazing. That's
All
a
right.
foreshadowing. Yeah, it's gonna happen.
I love it. Why you play great. If you play the way you did against Tulsa, you'll have no problem finding the back of the net tomorrow night. Juan, really appreciate this. I'll let you enjoy watching your country with your family. Appreciate you doing this, and best of luck tomorrow night against San Antonio.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep, my pleasure. That is Juan Tejada, outstanding switchback striker. I was shocked and dismayed, if I'm being honest. Like, it was nice that Giannis and Matt Mahoney got nominated for USL Team of the Week. No Juan Tejada. The guy has a hand in both goals. A huge win for the Switchbacks. No Team of the Week. I don't know what that's about. But, yeah, just Alan McCann, and you'll hear Alan's comments about Juan during tomorrow's broadcast leading up to the game. Just incredibly effusive with his praise for Juan Tejada, and a guy that he wouldn't even think about letting walk out the door. So appreciate Juan doing that. Shouts to Ashley being awesome, as always, getting that all lined up. 719-247-1313. Keep that number handy because I think you'd like to go see Juan tomorrow night play against San Antonio, wouldn't you? I have a 4-pack of tickets coming up next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Thanks again to Juan Tejada of Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC for joining me. He and the boys taking on San Antonio FC tomorrow night. No love lost between those two teams. If you would like to be there tomorrow night, I have a 4-pack of tickets to the 13th texter to text Switchbacks and their name to 719-247-1313. Let's keep with the soccer. At top of the hour, we'll get back into the NBA, the ripple effect of Giannis getting dealt to the Miami Heat, and now what do the Nuggets do? Not necessarily as an answer to the Giannis trade, but just what do they do? It is draft night after all. So once again, we are treated over the last 24 hours-ish to the biggest names in the sport all going blow for blow, shot for shot. This time, Messi starts things off with a pair of goals, breaking the record for most World Cup goals ever. Then Kylian Mbappe, in a game that was delayed by 2 hours because of weather, ends up scoring 2 goals. Then in the nightcap, Erling Haaland once again with 2 goals. So Mbappe and Haaland each with 4. Messi has 5. And then today, right? The last time we had this collection of stars in a 24 to 36 hour period, it was those guys who I just mentioned lighting up the scoreboard. And then it was Cristiano Ronaldo doing virtually nothing for Portugal, leading to questions about whether Portugal would be better off if Cristiano Ronaldo came off the bench. And I think that those questions were valid. Doesn't mean that Roberto Martinez has to agree to them, which he did not. But I think the way he played, and you just watch Portugal, and it looked like everyone, and I think you have to fight this sometimes. I mean, we even get it here locally with Nikola Jokic. How often do you see the Denver Nuggets just kind of standing around and waiting for Jokic to do something, or making sure that Jokic touches the ball, even if they have a chance to make a play themselves? It's one of the dynamics of having a great player is that you want to defer to him all the time. You want him to have the ball at his feet in this case, or in his hands, but it can be detrimental. And I ask the question, what do we owe legends? Okay, Cristiano Ronaldo is not in his prime anymore. I think we can agree on that. Lionel Messi's not even in his prime anymore, as spectacular as he has been. What do we owe the legends of our team, or in this case, our country? Does Portugal owe it to Ronaldo to put him in the starting 11 regularly, to make him a focal point of what they do? Portugal clearly felt to some degree that they owed it to Cristiano Ronaldo. We're not going to bring him off the bench. He's the face of our team. He's one of our best players. We're going to play him. And then what did Cristiano Ronaldo do today? Scored 2 goals. So maybe the stories of Ronaldo's demise are a bit exaggerated, but there was a moment in that game. It's actually not the 2 goals that Ronaldo scored that struck me. It was the goal he didn't score. Free kick about 5 yards from the edge of the 18. Clearly Cristiano Ronaldo territory, right? It's a free kick. It's straight on goal. You're going to let Ronaldo take it. Uzbekistan thought the same way I did. All the fans in that stadium probably thought Ronaldo, who was standing by the ball, was going to take it. And yet he didn't. And it caught Uzbekistan completely by surprise. Portugal gets a goal out of it. And Ronaldo goes to his bench, tapping on his temple. Basically saying, like, we fooled them. See? 4D chess here. Everyone thought I was going to take the kick. I didn't, and we scored a goal out of it. But I think that was a significant moment. Because it was Ronaldo's way. Because it's clear he could do whatever he wants. Right? If you're not going to bench him or bring him off the bench, don't want to sound it so, but just not start him. Not saying you punish the guy, but just you don't include him in the 11. After that performance that he had in their opener, then clearly you're not going to ever bench him. And he can do whatever he wants. And Ronaldo, I know he heard everything that everyone was saying. How everyone at Portugal's detriment, everyone was trying to get Ronaldo to score goals instead of making the right soccer play. And I think Ronaldo heard that stuff and he's like, watch this. And I'm not anti Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, he played for Manchester United. He's good in my book. But there's a lot of talk out there that he may be a selfish player. And that was a moment of unselfishness that benefited Portugal. But it just has added to another phenomenal. I mean, and we're going to get one more, right? We're going to get one more 2-day stretch where we're going to get Messi, Mbappe, Haaland, Ronaldo, and Harry Kane. Don't forget him. England and Ghana playing right now. 0-0. Harry Kane has not answered. We're going to get one more. And then we're going to probably get another one at least. Because I think all of these teams are going to make it out. It's just our focus is obviously on the United States of America. They're the biggest story, and our enjoyment in watching this tournament is, if not completely dependent on, at least driven in large part by the success of the U.S. men's national team. But while you're waiting to have Ronaldo, Messi, Kane, Mbappe, and Haaland going shot for shot is pretty dang cool. And it reminds me, like, imagine you had an NFL Sunday, and I'm sure these have happened quite a bit, where you get like Lamar Jackson in the early window and he puts on a show. And then in the late window, Josh Allen plays, which, if you're trying to figure out a comp for Erling Haaland, it's like Josh Allen. He plays soccer like Josh Allen plays football. And he's just this beast. But Lamar Jackson puts up great numbers in the 11 window, and then 2 o'clock rolls around and Josh Allen takes the field and puts on an equally impressive performance. And then Patrick Mahomes, I would say Tom Brady, but he's not in the league anymore. Patrick Mahomes takes the stage on Sunday Night Football and puts together his own masterclass. It's almost, and I said this with Messi's hat trick against Algeria, it's almost as if he knew. Right? We like to, athletes like to say that they have tunnel vision and they're only focused on themselves. It's hard for me to not watch all of these guys doing what they're doing in the World Cup and think that they have no idea what everyone else is doing. The competitors that these guys are. And they're, Haaland is as likable as any star in the sport. He was asked after the match about matching up potentially with Mbappe, and he was making a self-deprecating joke about how they're probably going to beat them and win the whole tournament, which there's probably some truth to that. But like Erling Haaland can wreck that game for Norway. Like I give Norway more than a puncher's chance with that guy on the field. But they'll say all the right things. They'll be self-deprecating and all of that kind of stuff, but the competitor in them, and you don't get to where those guys have gotten without being the most intense competitors. Even at Haaland's size. I know you watch Erling Haaland play and you're like, he probably doesn't need the motivation of a Lionel Messi or a smaller player because he could just bully people. Trust me, he's a competitor. I think these guys know. And whether it's the competitive nature in them or whether it's just the showman in them where they see a guy that is at the same stature as them. And I get Messi and Ronaldo are on a different level as all-time greats, but just right now in the game, Mbappe and Haaland and Messi and Ronaldo and Kane and these guys all, I mean, they're putting on a show, an absolute show. And to have Ronaldo pop up today like the way he did, that was pretty special. In that moment where he kind of pushed back against those who would say he's a selfish player, that Portugal is there just to placate him, I think that was a significant moment today. So soccer's been good. Ghana and England right now, 0-0. Harry Kane not keeping up his end of the bargain, although, my goodness, England is trying everything they can to get him the ball in the box right now. But this also speaks to, what I've been talking about throughout this tournament, the conversation I had with Juan Tejada in the last segment. If you're not getting the all-time greats or the greats of today's game putting on an absolute show, then you're getting these results that you're like, where did that come from? You're getting the Curacao goalkeeper standing on his head after the Cape Verde goalkeepers stood on his head a few days prior. And these results that you're like, I had no idea. And there was there's been some moments over the past couple of days where I'm like, are these guys, Messi and Kane and all these guys, picking on lesser teams? Is this what we're seeing because of expansion? But then I watch some of these teams in other matches and they're scoring goals on Germany and they're shutting out Spain. And I'm like, well, no, I just think these guys are this good that they can score 2 goals and it looks like they're just doing it for fun. So we got a good one. We're into stoppage time between England and Ghana. The U.S. obviously plays Thursday night, many lineup decisions. It does look like Christian Pulisic, by the way, is practicing with the team, which is something he did not do all last week. So maybe a sign that you'll see him on the field Thursday night. I just don't want this team to let up. The mentality that they've had, I think, is perfect, and I want them to sustain it even in a meaningless match against Turkey. So we'll have more on that matchup as we get closer. For now, we pause. Coming up at the top of the hour, what will the Nuggets do? Welcome in. Great to have you. Shouts to those of you watching the show on any one of the social media platforms that are so popular these days. Just make sure that you follow at Extra Sports 1300 at 740 KVOR. You can follow me on X at Gingerly Tweets and on Instagram at Gingewatch. 719-247-1313 is the number if you'd like to call or text into the show, or if you are watching, you could just drop a comment there on the screen or in the chat, whatever. I mean, I'm cool. I'm not that cool. I don't know all the lingo. So the big news out of the NBA is obviously Giannis Antetokounmpo getting traded to Miami. The next domino that everyone is waiting to fall would be Jaylen Brown and where he's going to end up. I mentioned Atlanta as a potential landing spot. I think that New Orleans is interesting. Although, and I love this. I took my sons to the city of New Orleans. I'd sign a long-term extension if I were in New Orleans. But if Jaylen Brown's about winning, I don't know that New Orleans should have less fear than apparently Milwaukee did when it comes to the chances that Jaylen Brown extends his contract there. But I think from an asset perspective, Atlanta or New Orleans make a lot of sense, where Boston can get back pieces. You still think that they could come out of the East next year. None of those pieces will be Giannis, but you still have Jason Tatum, Derek White, at least for now. And then there are the Nuggets. And I told you yesterday that the most significant addition that the Nuggets are going to make this offseason will be tonight or today. Because today they can trade their first-round pick if they choose as a sweetener for a trade, or they could trade up, or they could stay where they are. And the most significant addition the Nuggets make is whoever they draft at 26 tonight. If I'm you and I'm a Nuggets fan, I'm probably not having the highest hopes that when I say most significant addition, that in the wake of Giannis getting traded and Jaylen Brown probably being traded, that the Nuggets addition is going to be in line with those. And that's why I have said from the beginning that if the Denver Nuggets want to ultimately take a step forward and get back to contending for titles, they are going to have to take a step back this year. But the step back I'm talking about is a different one than what is reportedly what the Nuggets step back looks like. I'm not talking about dumping salary. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm saying you trade another member of this core, or hey, if you can unload Christian Brown or Cam Johnson and accomplish this goal, I think it's hard to do that, but hey, if you can do it, more power to you. But it's Jamal Murray, preferably Aaron Gordon, if the market for Jamal Murray is not great. But you take one of these guys, you get younger players that fit more what you need, which are guys that can get to the rim and protect the rim, or keeping teams away from the rim. It's very rim-centric what the Nuggets need. So if you could get that, and I'll throw out my favorite mock trade, which is Jamal Murray going to Detroit and the Nuggets getting Asar Thompson back. Okay, that's taking a step back, because I don't think you can expect the Denver Nuggets to be better than they were last year with still a young player in Asar Thompson. But he's the right kind of player that the Denver Nuggets need. And if you lose a little bit of salary, right? You take some money off the books in a trade like that. And you'd have to include, like, Detroit would have to offer up other players because Asar Thompson doesn't make enough money. But if you could skim a few bucks off the top and maybe you make a move, I know everyone with the Denver Nuggets fan base is hoping they find a taker for Christian Brown. Okay, you shed some salary there. I don't think it's a good idea for the Nuggets to get in the second apron. It's too punitive. But this repeater tax stuff, that's what I have no patience for, and you shouldn't either if you're a Nuggets fan. That's where you call an organization cheap. Because it's not punitive like the second apron. It's just money. It's just more money out of the Kroenke's pocket. So if they're not willing to do that, then that's where the claims of cheapness come into play. But if the Denver Nuggets can move on from somebody and get some young up-and-coming players from a team that is really eager to win now, and that's why I keep throwing out Detroit, right? They just saw the Knicks win an NBA title. They may feel like it's their time. Well, it's not going to be their time if they stand pat. I think what it is for the Denver Nuggets is they're going to take a step back. I don't foresee any way that the Denver Nuggets roster going into next year is going to be the one that they went into last year with. I just don't see how that's possible. The question just becomes, are you taking a step back because you're remaking your roster and you have to bet on some younger players, or are you taking a step back because you're just shedding salary so you get out of the repeater tax? You're taking a step back either way. You can take a proactive step back, choose to take a step back with the idea that you have a path to take a step forward, not this coming season, but the next, or you could just take a step back just so you save money on the bottom line, and there's no guarantee that you're going to come back the next year any better. That's really the dilemma facing the Denver Nuggets, and I don't think it's really a dilemma. It's a matter of, are you really committed to doing everything in your power to deliver another championship to Denver and to Nikola Jokic? That's what it comes down to me. For me. And a lot of NBA insiders do seem to think that the Nuggets are going to be quite popular when it comes to making phone calls. Maybe the Boston is a little bit more popular now because everyone feels like they have to trade Jaylen Brown and soon. But a lot of people have been sniffing around the Denver Nuggets. So there will be moves that there will be trade offers. There will be moves that the Nuggets can make. Do they pull the trigger on those, and what do those look like? That's what we'll all find out. But tonight's the night they can trade their first round pick. And I just don't see how standing pat at 26 and sitting up there after you make the pick and proclaiming that the Denver Nuggets are back, I don't see how you can do that. This is what you've been doing, or Calvin Booth more accurately, because you haven't even had any draft picks lately. This is what Calvin Booth tried to do. I got these guys in the 20s. Look how good we are. Okay, well, Peyton Watson, unless you do something drastic to your roster, is not coming back. Christian Brown, you handed one of the worst contracts in the NBA, and you had no reason to do it. Zero. The team started off last offseason making a very shrewd trade that you could, the type of trade that I'm talking about them making again this year, where maybe the guys you get in return for Michael Porter are not as talented as Michael Porter, but you get multiple players. that fit into what you're doing. And I think that the Nuggets did. It didn't work out, but it was the right move. And then the very next thing they did was put themselves in more cap hell by paying Christian Braun when he didn't deserve it. Instead of waiting it out, I don't know what Christian Braun did to be a no-brainer to sign to an extension, but Peyton Watson, you're like, yeah, we'll wait on him. But they put themselves in the very same predicament where they have a contract that is very difficult, if not impossible, for them to trade. And look, if they find a taker for Christian Braun and they end up with something of value, then I will be, because just in the vein of transparency and honesty, I didn't think that the Nuggets were going to pull off a trade like they did last summer with Michael Porter. I didn't think that they wanted to do it. I didn't think they had the stomach for it. And I didn't think that if they did, it would be anything other than a salary dump. And it wasn't. So I'm allowing for the possibility that I am surprised again. But Michael Porter is far more valuable and far more talented than Christian Braun. So it's going to be a more difficult putt for the Denver Nuggets. But there are so many teams that are having to voluntarily take a step back in order to try and take a step forward in the near future. And there's one example of this in the last 24 hours. Tim Connolly, you remember Tim, traded Julius Randle for nothing. They just dumped Julius Randle's salary on the Nets. They did not get a player back. And they'll try to spin it, and they'll try to say this is addition by subtraction. I've seen T-Wolves insiders say that very thing. Now, I don't love Julius Randle as a basketball player, but the type of player he is, but I acknowledge that he is talented. And you just dumped him for nothing. And this is what I'm talking about. Now, the Wolves have a little bit of a mess on their hands because now the Sharks are circling and everybody on ESPN is saying Anthony Edwards is going to be the next star that wants out. And there are reports saying that he's been frustrated since they traded Karl Anthony Towns, which was a move that they did kind of in the same vein. The roster got too expensive. They had to trade Cat, who is clearly a better player than Julius Randle. And it has aged even worse now that Cat is an NBA champion. And so they had to do this too. How do the Wolves get better moving forward? Because free agency, as we know it, is gone. Right? Nobody's hitting the market anymore, right? There's super maxes that in play and just nobody's going to the free agent market. The Timberwolves are worse than they were 2 days ago. And I don't know who they're going to bring in. And that's the problem with these salary dumps. But all this, there are levels to this, right? There is a bigger bad guy. There's a bigger villain. So people in Minnesota might not be pleased, and you might not be pleased if the Nuggets just dump salary tonight. But there's a bigger villain here. And it's this NBA manufactured this second apron thing, which is acting as a hard salary cap, and don't allow anyone in the NBA to tell you any different. That's what it is. Everybody is scared to death of this thing. And it has become so punitive to go into it that it's acting like a hard salary cap. And we're going to have a day here in the very near future where not a single team is in the second apron. Not a one. This is the overcompensation that the NBA has done in light of the super team era. Right? They had a fix. It was the Supermax. Guy you draft and develop, you can sign for more money than anybody else can. That was the fix. And then they took it a step further and said, we need this second apron. And that's why the Minnesota Timberwolves have to trade Cat, and why they're now trading Julius Randle, and why the Denver Nuggets have been absolutely stuck as a franchise since the minute they lifted the Larry O'Brien trophy. But they did this to themselves. Stan Kroenke and the other owners did this. But that's the bigger villain in all of this, that these teams just have to get rid of guys that in a past NBA they wouldn't even think to trade. There's no basketball justification for trading Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle. There's none. And there wasn't at the time. But they had to because of money. In a world where you could just go into the luxury tax, no reason to make that trade. Just pay dollar for dollar. You got a lot of money. You own a pro sports franchise. Reinvest. I dislike what the NBA has become under these new rules. I dislike that we've had 8 different champions over 8 years. I'm not about super teams. But again, the NBA had their fix. It was in place. And they just went a step too far. But I want teams that build the right way. The Denver Nuggets under Tim Connolly, the Boston Celtics. I want these teams to be able to stay together and to be able to make moves to stay near the top instead of just immediately plummeting to never be heard from again. Doesn't make for a better product. But I digress. Nuggets have the 26th pick in tonight's draft. So no Boozer, no DeBonsta, no Peterson for the Denver Nuggets. Will they make a move, and what move would you like to see them make? 719-24-7. 1313 coming up next. The NFL has ruled on Brendan Sorsby, who you're not going to see play football in the United States anyway for a while. Switchbacks FC in action tomorrow night at Widener Field, hosting San Antonio FC. If you would like to go for the match that kicks off at 6 tomorrow night, be the 13th texter to text Switchbacks in your name to 719-247-1313. That's Switchbacks in your name to 719-247-1313. I said when Brendan Sorsby was asked politely to leave Texas Tech, I believe that's what happened. At Texas Tech was like, we can't withstand a barrage of litigation. You just need to go. And Brendan Sorsby was like, cool, I'll just go to the NFL. I said, oh, wait a minute. The NFL can decide whether they have a supplemental draft. And yes, Brendan Sorsby would meet the criteria, at least in terms of being ineligible to play college football and have been ineligible for the draft when it happened in April. He meets those criteria, but those aren't the only criteria. We're talking about the shield here. They got a lot of rules, and they can, kind of wield them at their discretion. And I said the reason why I didn't think it was a sure thing that Brendan Sorsby would be allowed to be in a supplemental draft is because how problematic is it for the NFL to let this guy in when he's bet on his own sport? I'm not saying that the NFL should, back up what the NCAA said and be in lockstep with them. I'm just saying for a guy that is not that meaningful to the NFL, right? He hasn't played it down, provides no value. You're not going to sell a bunch of Brendan Sorsby jerseys. So you're going to let a guy in that made countless bets, including ones on his own sport. And when he was faced with the consequences of his actions, ran to a courtroom. Like, do you want to let that guy into the league when you don't have to? In 2027, they may have very little chance to keep him out of the NFL draft. But right now, they have the power to keep him out of the supplemental draft, and they're using it. As they have decided, they're not going to allow him to be in the supplemental draft because they're not having one. And I wanted to pull up the letter from the NFL because it was a bit savage in there, if we're being honest. So this obtained by Mike Garafolo of NFL Media. Under our collective bargaining agreement, the league retains sole discretion to determine whether it is appropriate to conduct a supplemental draft in any given year, what I just said. Said the league had no plans to do so this year, as no other player has sought entry. Your petition, this is where it gets good. Your petition, filed 3 business days before the deadline, without any supporting information or documentation, and only after abandoning your recent litigation efforts to avoid NCAA sanctions, does not provide a basis for the league to alter those plans. The issues presented by your petition are too significant and too closely tied to the league's core integrity interest to permit meaningful review within the timeline presented. Allow me to translate. We don't want someone who has bet on football in our league. And maybe down the line, they don't, like I said, maybe they don't have power forever to keep him out. But they have power right now, and they're using it, and I applaud the NFL for doing it. Because Brendan Sorsby has, to the NFL's point, taken very little ownership of what he's done. The ultimate sign of ownership would be to take your ineligibility from the NCAA. Don't go crying to a local judge in Lubbock. Take your punishment. Use the next year to show that you're handling the addiction that you claim that you have, that you're handling it. You finish your education, however much is left of it. You be a model citizen, 2027 rolls around, and the NFL may begrudgingly let you in. And by the way, he still has the chance to do that. But the idea that, I mean, at some point, I get it. The NCAA does not have the power. Like today, the NCAA just said we're adopting the 5-and-5 rule. 5 years to play 5 years. I believe Tommy Tuberville was the congressman that put this idea forth. The NCAA is like, sounds good. We're taking it. Okay, you're going to be able to enforce it? Sounds like the eligibility rules you already have on the books. Now, it's not the same eligibility rules, but I'm saying you couldn't even enforce the eligibility rules on your books. You're going to adopt a new one? So, great. The NCAA did this thing. They have no power. Like, I understand the even with my tiny brain, I do understand that the NCAA doesn't have legal grounds to enforce these rules. But that does not mean that you should take advantage of that. And the NFL noticed. But now Brendan Sorsby has the ability to do everything I just said. He can work on himself as a human being. He can work on this addiction that he claims to have. He could be a model citizen, and he can pop up in what we think will be a stacked quarterback class next year. And he could be an NFL player, as I'm sure he's always dreamed of. But this is good from the NFL. The NFL still has power. And I think they're using it in the right way. And this is not picking on Brendan Sorsby. The guy bet on, like, there are some lines that you just don't cross. And everybody with half a brain can understand, yeah, maybe not in a court of law. There are a lot of loopholes in our judicial system, as I'm sure you've noticed over the years, right? There's technicalities and all of this kind of stuff. But what's right when it comes to sport is that if you bet on your own sport, you are done. That's it. I guess allowing college football is his sport. The NFL is not technically his sport. So I fight the urge to be like, I don't think he should even be in the NFL. But you know what? That's fine. Now, he's going to be watched like a hawk, and he's going to have to show some signs over this time that these demons aren't coming back. I didn't think it was a shoo-in that he would just go, and it shows a level of entitlement. You messed up in a major way. You committed the one cardinal sin of sports. And you just act like all these doors should open to you. No, I should play. I'll get a judge to grant a temporary injunction. Okay, that didn't work out. I'll just go to the NFL. They should allow me to go. How privileged do you have to be? This kid's life doesn't need to be the grown man. This grown man's life doesn't need to be over because of this. But I'm glad somebody's holding him accountable. So no supplemental draft, no Brendan Sorsby this year. But I haven't seen anything out there to say he can't be in the 2027 draft. Now, the question is, if you care at this point, where does Brendan Sorsby play football this year? I'm suggesting that he doesn't. I just think that's the best thing. But if he wants to go to the CFL, I guess that avenue is open to him. If I'm him, I'm just training, working out, training, taking every opportunity that I have to show that what I did at Indiana is never going to happen again. Because this is, so say he can get into the 2027 draft. You know what kind of off the wall questions are asked to prospects in the NFL draft process? Like, you don't think that's going to be the first question? He's going to get grilled from every NFL team he meets with about this. And I think it's going to be a red flag. And I think there are going to be some number of teams that don't want any part of this guy. And I wouldn't blame them. Somebody will take a chance on him because he's a very talented quarterback. But the idea that everyone's going to be clamoring for this guy, no way. Couple of teams. That'll be about it. So Brendan Sorsby denied by the NFL. They will not have a supplemental draft, which I know ruins your plans for the summer, that there's no NFL supplemental draft. But no supplemental draft. Brendan Sorsby eligible to be in the 2027 draft, and now he's kind of a man without a land here. He dropped the injunction. He's ineligible to play in the NCAA. He's not allowed in the NFL. What does he do with his time this upcoming season? 719-24-7. 1313. We'll have more Drive Time Sports after this. So everyone waiting to see where Jaylen Brown is going to end up. Shams Charania did say that the Nuggets are among the potential suitors for Jaylen Brown, a player that I think is exactly what the Nuggets need. Exactly what they need. The problem is, how are they going to get it? I have put together a couple of trades that would land the Nuggets Jason Tatum, or Jaylen Brown, excuse me. Maybe they could land Jason Tatum with these. But financially, these would work. Okay, that's all I'm promising. Financially, they work. The first trade, I'll admit, is a little pie in the sky. It is Jamal Murray, Cam Johnson, and Christian Brown for Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and Hugo Gonzalez. And I get it. That is far-fetched. I said it's pie in the sky because we know that the Boston Celtics, you will have to pry Hugo Gonzalez from Brad Stevens' cold, dead fingers. So that's really the only reason. If Brad Stevens softened up on his stance on Hugo Gonzalez being untouchable, then I think that we would have good to go. Murray, Cam, and Christian Brown for Jaylen Brown and Derek White and Hugo Gonzalez. I think that's fair, right? For the Nuggets. Here's one that is a little bit more tethered to reality, but I don't know if the Celtics would go for this. Jamal Murray and Zeke Naji for Jaylen Brown. And by the way, willing to include the 26th pick in either one of those trades, Brad Stevens. You can have the Nuggets first round pick tonight. Think they go for it? I don't either. But it highlights one of the many issues that is facing the Denver Nuggets is that they just don't have much of value to offer anybody. And in moments like this, I think you understand how much of all of this has been Jokic. Like you truly see when you can't say that Jamal Murray and a first-round pick for Jaylen Brown is a fair deal, or even really feel like that's close to a fair deal. That's your second best player. He's an all-star. And I look at that trade, I'm like, there's no way Boston would do it. That tells you. Now, Aaron Gordon's tough to make work with the money. So maybe you trade, maybe there's a way you could trade Aaron Gordon. Maybe he would have some value to Boston. But to me, that's, you're just swapping guys out. I think in an ideal world that the Denver Nuggets hang on to Aaron Gordon and get somebody more like Aaron Gordon to go with Aaron Gordon. But it just shows you that the Nuggets don't have a lot of value to offer anybody. So I'm down for Jaylen Brown becoming a Denver Nugget. Love to have him. I just don't know how the Denver Nuggets are supposed to pull it off. They have one pick. They have Murray, Gordon, and one of the worst contracts in the NBA in Christian Brown. What would you like, Brad Stevens? You can take your pick. But that was the problem with Giannis, right? Even if you wanted Giannis on the Denver Nuggets, what could they have possibly offered Milwaukee? Given you now know what the return was. Can the Nuggets even come close? They couldn't even let's say that the Giannis is a Boston Celtic today because Jaylen Brown and 2 first-round picks was good enough. The Nuggets can't even do that. They can't even offer up a similar deal to that one. And this is a team that has won a title with a lot of the players that are still on the roster. It just shows you it's Jokic. Which is why I say if you get the right type of players that are a little bit younger, maybe a little bit cheaper, and put them with Nikola Jokic, yeah, this year you won't be as good, but you have a chance to get back. With this team as currently constructed, I don't think they're getting back. I really don't. I think it sucks what happened to Minnesota and just having to dump Julius Randle for nothing. If those two teams played again in a 7-game series tomorrow, I'd take Minnesota, wouldn't you? So the Wolves got worse. They didn't get worse enough to lose a 7-game series to the Nuggets. And then you have Wemby, and then you have OKC. I just don't see the path forward for this team. I don't know how you can add any, but we thought Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway was going to be it. Boom. Getting those two guys, that's exactly what they needed. Depth. They got a backup big. Non-Jokic minutes are not going to be a thing anymore. Maybe that was an overreaction. It'll be less of a thing. Didn't work out. So tell me who's available that they can get that will finally allow them to rectify that. And the way that they're just dumping salary, that's not going to do you any good. That's not going to make you better. And again, the bigger villain is the financial rules that are in play in the NBA. The owner of the Denver Nuggets was a proponent of it. Not his son, not the governor, the guy who goes down as the governor. I mean, the guy who signs the paychecks. He wanted this. Let us not forget. But the Denver Nuggets did everything right, won a title, and they have just been getting their butts kicked by this new financial format in the NBA ever since. The change that they need to make has to be quite drastic. And they don't have a lot to be able to bring forth that change. But hey, if the Celtics are willing to listen, I call them up. Again, I don't go right to Aaron Gordon, but let's see what else that looks like. Right? Because you can't do Aaron Gordon for Jaylen Brown straight up. Okay, so there are going to have to be other things. So depending on what those other things are, maybe I might be a little bit more amenable to moving Aaron Gordon and getting Jaylen Brown. But I would prefer a trade centered around Jamal Murray. And it wouldn't make the Nuggets complete as a roster. Because with Jamal Murray, they need more ball handling. Without Jamal Murray, they're in desperate need of ball handling. So even landing Jaylen Brown would not be, a sure fire way to get back to the NBA Finals. But that's what I'm saying. This team may need to take a intentional step back to remake their roster to take a step forward in the next couple of years. Wouldn't be a finished product, but Jaylen Brown, when I describe the type of players that the Nuggets should want, just look at Jaylen Brown. That's the type of player. So if there's any way they can get him other than trading 15, I'm all ears. But I just don't think that they have enough. So grounding a little bit more in reality, the question just becomes how are they going to keep Peyton Watson and at whose expense? Really, that's the realistic question facing the Denver Nuggets. And a trade they could make tonight could allow them to re-sign Peyton Watson. But this stuff, Jaylen Brown and my ideas of, I think my ideas are good. I'm a little bit biased, I'll admit, but I just think it's difficult because I don't think that the Nuggets have much value to offer anybody. 719-247-1313. Couple of texts coming in from Brett. Christian Brown doesn't work very hard in his rehab. He was usually about an hour late. Adios, Christian. Can't back those up, but clearly his rehab did not go well. He did not attack the rehab the way that he should have. I don't know why, but he came back and then he immediately had to be hurt again. Kind of the Jamal Murray stuff, right? Jamal Murray, it was believed that he didn't always attack his rehab in the way that he should. I think there was a little bit of that with Christian Brown, certainly. And then Brett adds the difference between Brendan Sorsby and 100 other quarterbacks is that he got caught. I know that you're just throwing out a random number to make the point that this is more widespread than just Brendan Sorsby, and you're probably right. I refuse to believe it's 100 other quarterbacks or even close to that. Maybe even as negative as I am accused of being on a daily basis on this show, I don't think that betting on your own sport is that prevalent. Betting in general, probably quite prevalent. Very prevalent, rampant, widespread. But betting on your own sport, betting on your own team, that's the difference between Brendan Sorsby and everybody else. And I refuse to believe that there's a lot more Brendan Sorsbys out there. But if there are others doing it, and you say, why did Brendan Sorsby get caught and the others didn't? I don't know. Maybe it was like the 900 bets that he made. Like maybe $8.99, you can get away with it. 900 bets, it's like they're going to get you. There's a tipping point there. 719-247-1313. We'll hit the three stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, the NBA draft tonight at 6, if you are interested. And Panama, Juan Tejadas, Canal Boys getting ready to play in the World Cup. More Drive Time Sports after this on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Hello there. Welcome. Great to have you. Whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or you are watching the show anywhere you scroll, granted you follow either of those two stations or follow me at GingerWatch on Instagram, at Gingerly Tweets on X. If you would like to take your participation in today's show to the next level, easy enough for you to do that. You can call or text in the show at 719-247-1313, or you could just drop a comment right there on the live stream you are watching. Perhaps you have a thought on the three stories that are driving the show. All right, story number one, our long national nightmare is over until the next superstar wants out of his city. Giannis Antetokounmpo traded late last night to the Miami Heat and not the Boston Celtics. And I look at this and I say I hate it from every angle. Now, if you're the Miami Heat, let's start there, because what I don't like about it for the Miami Heat is that I don't think that they're much closer to competing in the NBA's Eastern Conference. I don't see them with what they gave up and now just basically being Giannis and Bam and Nikola Jovic being better than Cleveland or New York or even Boston, who didn't complete the Giannis trade. So, look, you take Giannis and you move on, but, you try to figure it out. But Pat Riley's dealing with a very different NBA than the one where he was able to get LeBron or when he built around Shaquille O'Neal. Okay, so good on him for landing a superstar, but there's a lot of work to do in Miami till they are even considered a threat to win an NBA title. But I don't like the trade because it would just been so much better if he would have ended up in Boston. It's what Boston was offering was a basketball trade. We have a dynamic between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum that doesn't really work anymore. We have a team that could not pass up an opportunity to shoot a three if their life depended on it. And in Giannis, they get a rim protector, which they do not have. And they have a guy who does not want to take any threes. Giannis would be perfect for Boston. With Miami, it's attention grabbing. It puts butts in seats. It gets jerseys sold, but it doesn't. That team is far from complete, as I said. With Boston, it's like good to go. Jason Tatum, Giannis, Derek White, go win yourself a championship. It would have been so much cleaner and so much better if he would have ended up in Boston. And I hate it for Boston. And if this is all over Hugo Gonzalez, then shame on you, Brad Stevens. That's the report out there, that they didn't want to offer one of their young rotational pieces. I mean, you found Peyton Pritchard and you found Baylor Shireman and you found Hugo Gonzalez. Like, don't you believe you could find another one of those guys again somewhere down the line? So if that's really the reason, then that's, I don't get that from Boston's perspective. But I hate it for Boston because it would have been such a perfect fit to get Giannis. And I don't like it for Giannis, even though I don't feel sorry for him because he wanted this and he didn't even have the guts to just say, I want out. But I hate it for Giannis because obviously there's no path in the next year or two for him to compete for a title, and he's only getting older. So I don't like the trade all around. I don't think, and who am I forgetting? Milwaukee. I don't like it from Milwaukee's perspective because with Jaylen Brown, you don't have a theoretical player that you can only take 4 years from now because that's when the draft picks Miami gave Milwaukee are for. You get a star in Jaylen Brown, and you can build around him. You could have your next star in Milwaukee and show him the plan that you have to compete, and he could fall in love with that city and that fan base, and you give yourself a chance to do that. But the guy who put the kibosh on it, reportedly, is the same guy who owns the Cleveland Browns. So when you say that doesn't make a lot of sense, understand who is an owner of the Milwaukee Bucks. Oh, it's the same guy that runs the Cleveland Browns. Logic and reason are not part of his thought process. But have fun with the Tyler Hero homecoming tour as your, one of the 3 worst teams in the NBA next year. I don't like it, but at least it's over. And now we can move on to other business, which is where's Jaylen Brown going and how soon before Anthony Edwards asks out of Minnesota, because now the rumor is he's been unhappy since they traded Karl Anthony Towns, and I don't really blame him. I don't blame him for being upset. Okay, we got to... The next step of it, I'm not saying I wouldn't blame him for asking out. I'm just saying I understand that he's been a bit frustrated with the Minnesota Timberwolves, if the reporting is true, since they traded Cat, because that wasn't a move to get better. That was a move to get cheaper. And those are aggravating because they're aggravating everybody right now. Which leads me into story number 2, which is the NBA draft is tonight. And the Denver Nuggets may do something or they may not. Can't be any more decisive than that. Sorry. This is the first look into what this Nuggets offseason is going to be. Right? We didn't have this chance last year because they felt like Deron Holmes was the be-all, end-all, and so they didn't have a pick to take. They have a pick. The first thing last offseason was the Michael Porter trade. Pretty good start. Thought that they followed up well. Didn't really work out. You got to pivot, do something else. This is where we see where the Nuggets' heads are at. Right now, it's a lot of hearsay. It's a lot of, insiders saying this or whatever. Now we find out what the Denver Nuggets' plan is. Is the plan to make a move of significance to try and remake this roster, to put yourself back among the serious NBA title contenders, or are you just trying to lighten the load on your wallet? Are you just going to dump Cam Johnson? Are you taking your first-round pick and packaging it with Christian Brown so you could get rid of him? Or are you packaging it with Zeke Naji so you could get rid of him? Are you just going to stand pat and take a guy at 26 that has very little chance of being a significant player for you because history tells you that guys drafted this 26th are not impact players, not big impact players? You can get Christian Brown there, but look what happened. Christian Brown was fine for the role he was in. And then the Nuggets said, you're capable of more. And Christian Brown said emphatically, no, I am not. And now here we are with an albatross of a contract around the neck of the Nuggets. So I'm genuinely curious. I'm not optimistic. I'm curious what the first order of business is this offseason. I leave myself open to be surprised because I didn't think that they had the stomach to make the move they did with Michael Porter or the ability. But that's one thing. Trading a Jamal Murray is a different thing. And I think that's what they have to do. I think they have to trade Jamal Murray. NBA draft coming up less than an hour from now. Nuggets right now on the clock with pick 26. And then our third story is the NFL telling Brendan Sorsby no. They wrote a letter to him basically saying you provided no evidence to convince us that we should let you in our supplemental draft, which we have the ability to not hold if we don't want to. That's what they're claiming. And they said, yeah, we're not letting you in. And it's just the entitlement that Brendan Sorsby has had throughout this entire process continues to backfire on him. He felt he had the right to play college football when playing college football is a privilege, and betting on your own team should revoke that privilege permanently. And so he ran to the court. And when the Big 12 and the NCAA fought fire with fire and said, we can go to court and file something, we too could play at that game, Brendan Sorsby said, it's okay, I'll just go to the NFL. This guy just needs to keep his head down and work on being a better person or a healthier person and get ready for the 2027 NFL draft, which I don't think the NFL can tell him no. He is eligible for it. But I'm glad to see this. It's not that I have it out for Brendan Sorsby, but he committed the cardinal sin of sports. And there have to be consequences. And you don't just get to run to your local courthouse. Or you don't just get to go to the NFL and be like, hey, guys, let me in. So I'm glad that he's being shown that there are, after all of this, there are actual consequences for his actions. He will be ineligible to play college football. And he will not be allowed to be in the NFL via the supplemental draft. This is a good result. And I hope Brendan Sorsby is better for this experience. And when he is in the NFL draft and does get taken by a team, I hope that he can manage the addiction that he claims to have. Because I got to imagine it's got to be very tempting to bet on sports when you are in sports. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, the Brady Tkachuk trade has certainly gotten things going in the NHL. A couple of trades today, neither involve the Avs, so you have to wait on that. But it seems like the moves are coming fast and furious right now in the NHL, and why the next American hockey star is probably on the way out the door. I'll tell you who that is next. I think some people, after what I said yesterday about the super team era, and you could call this went by a different name in the NBA. It was player empowerment, right? Player empowerment was what they glossed it as, which the term sounds like, yeah, player empowerment. I'm good. Empower the players. Absolutely. But what they did with that empowerment led to the super team era. And that is what we're seeing in the NHL. If you want to use your power as a player to get to a better spot, that is not what I think most hockey fans are against. Yes, if you're a fan of the team that the star is asking out of, yeah, you feel some kind of way about it. But in general, my issue is not that they want to use their leverage to be able to get to a better situation. It's that they're using their leverage to get to two situations, the one in Florida and the one in Vegas. That's where everybody is trying to go, it seems. That's what I have a problem with. If one guy, wants to go to New Jersey and one guy wants to go to Colorado and one guy wants to go to Dallas and one guy wants to go to Carolina, then okay, then you're still keeping the integrity of the sport intact, right? Because guys are competing with one another instead of joining forces. Like, yes, there are going to be teams that come out on the other end better than others. If the Avs were able to add, I don't know, a Zach Werenski, yeah, that would make them a really tough team to beat, right? So the super team stuff is when you just want to join up with your buddies or in Brady's case, your brother. And he said it had nothing to do with the brother. Okay, well, yeah, it did. Okay, it didn't have to do with Matthew as your brother, but it had to do with Matthew as your Team USA teammate, and he's really good, and the Panthers are really good. I don't have an issue with players wanting to get themselves into a better situation, and a lot of them have no movement clauses, but they don't have no movement clauses barring them from going to 28 of the 30 teams. Or 32 teams, right? Like, that's my issue. When they all seem to want to go to two places, that's where you have a problem. Now, let's see the rest of the offseason shake out, because Brady Tkachuk's not going to be the last guy, okay? News out of Columbus, or reporting out of Columbus, saying that Zach Werenski is going to meet with the Blue Jackets brass after the draft. I wonder what's going to come of that. Connor Hellebuck, still out there. And I'll say this. I'm seeing reporting that the Panthers are unwilling to include Anton Lindell in any deal for Connor Hellebuck. Okay, that should mean Florida cannot get him. So if Florida still ends up with Connor Hellebuck without giving up the player within reason, they're not going to give up Matthew Tkachuk, right? But Anton Lindell, a player that it should be reasonable for Winnipeg to ask for in return. If Florida still ends up with Connor Hellebuck anyway, then that will just lend credence to what I am saying. So as time goes on, and I've heard some stuff with Dallas when it comes to Dylan Larkin. Okay. That's trying to get to a better situation. But if everybody wants to go to Florida and everybody wants to go to Vegas, that is what we dealt with in the NBA, and we don't remember that time fondly. And that's what I don't want to happen in the NHL. So if player empowerment just remains player empowerment and guys are holding bad organizations accountable, then I could get on board with that. But if these guys end up in just two different NHL cities, then that is a massive problem. And that's what we had in the NBA. And there was a comment on, we posted a video from yesterday's show, me talking about the super team. And the thing I don't love about social media is that it's just a clip and it's not the full context, but that's the way of the world. That's fine. Come in, join me on a show, and I'll further explain myself. But somebody said, like, Ottawa could have said no. Could they have? Because that's an important thing here. Could they have said no? Because I'm hearing just as much reporting that Brady and Tkachuk in the end shoehorned them into trading him to Florida, that it was just Florida. So could Ottawa have said no? Yeah, and lose him for nothing. But the idea that Ottawa had all of these options, I just don't think that that's true. I think Brady Tkachuk used the power that he has to get himself to Florida, and Florida specifically. And that's crossing a line here. That's the line to cross. When it's not just get me to a better situation, get me to this or this situation, that specific one right there. With no regard for what you're going to get in return. Like, he didn't do Ottawa any favors in the end. They didn't get one NHL player. They had to use one of their picks, and they traded him to get defensemen from San Jose. So now San Jose has like 8 picks in the first round of the draft. They have a ton of picks. That's what we have a problem with as sports fans. And I don't know how you can call a guy forcing his way to the team that the only reason, shouldn't say the only reason, the main reason why they didn't three-peat was because one of their best players in Alexander Barkov was hurt. Like, Carolina didn't take the Stanley Cup from them. Florida vacated the title this year. They won the last 2 before that, and that's the team that Brady Tkachuk wants to go to. I understand the desire to have them on the list, but when we're seeing all these reported lists and it's Vegas, Florida, Vegas, Florida, Vegas, Florida, that's where I draw the line. That's not you wanting out of a bad situation to get to a better one. That's you trying to join up with your buddies that you played in Italy with and creating a super team. So Zach Werenski, we'll see what comes of this. I feel like we've seen this movie a few times already this summer, but we'll see if Zach Werenski does end up asking out of Columbus and where his preferred trade destinations may be. And then you got Connor Hellebuyck. You still have Dylan Larkin sitting out there. I got to give some credit, though. For now, anyway. Things can change, as you've noticed. No word on Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor is an American playing in Winnipeg. Okay, I don't know if you've been to Winnipeg, but I can't imagine it's the most attractive destination for a player, to put it politely, right? And yet Kyle Connor, haven't heard a peep. All good in Winnipeg. Good on him. At least maybe go that way. If you're not buying into the super team stuff, at least give credit to the guys who are willing to stick it out with their teams. Give them extra credit and I just don't want these guys that are asking out. None of these guys demanding a trade should be celebrated. Right? There's just a way to go about it that doesn't make it worse because you force yourself to one or two potential destinations. But these guys that want out, they shouldn't be celebrated. And the guys that want to stick it out, which is apparently Kyle Connor and then the Canadian national team, deserve credit. Other trades today, another trade in the NHL that caught my eye. Jordan Kyrou is going to the Capitals. And we're all kind of wondering if Ovi is done or is he not done. This seems like the Capitals are making a move to try and be better this year for potentially Alexander Ovechkin's last year in the NHL. So kind of significant on two fronts. Jordan Kyrou is a good player, but also this could mean that Alexander Ovechkin is going to be back in Washington. Nothing yet from the Avs. I mean, they did make the Ross Colton trade, so I shouldn't say no move of great significance yet from the Colorado Avalanche. But again, Val Nichushkin continues more and more smoke billowing around him as maybe the guy that Joe Sakic uses to make a move this offseason. And unlike the Denver Nuggets, I've said this about the Avalanche. The Nuggets, I feel like they should take a sledgehammer to the roster. With the Avalanche, it's a scalpel, right? It just make a move. Overall, I like what they have. I think that they're a Stanley Cup contender for sure. I don't need wild changes going on with the Colorado Avalanche. But if you could take a guy like Nelson Natchez or Nichushkin, who to varying degrees have disappointed over the past couple of years, and be able to, get more depth, open up some financial flexibility, what have you, I think that would be good. Before Seattle made the deal with Florida, which then allowed Florida to make the deal for Brady Tkachuk, I think they had the number 9 pick, and the Senators just traded the 9th pick today. Would the 9 pick and Shane Wright be too much to ask in exchange for Valeri Nichushkin? I've been thinking about that. Of course, it's a moot point now because they moved the 9th pick. Seattle did. And then Florida turned around and used it, and now Ottawa is using it. I was thinking like something like that. But that's only because that's a top 10 pick. That would be intriguing. Anything in the double digits, I don't know that that's what Joe Sakic should be looking at. But Shane Wright's an intriguing player. Liked him a lot going into the draft. Hasn't really hit for Seattle. And the Joe Sakic era in Colorado has certainly been littered with these guys. Valeri Nichushkin was one of them. High draft pick, failed to impress in the place they were, comes to Colorado, and it works out. 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Juan Tejada's boys sticking in there with Croatia right now. Panama and Croatia goalless in the 39th minute. That match is in Toronto. I saw this on Twitter. Obviously, I've had the volume off in the studio when I was watching Ghana and England. I think the Fox commentator, one of them, I don't know who it is, said that this would not be the first time that England struggled in Boston or Massachusetts or something. Probably didn't do it justice, but you get the point, right? The American Revolution. Yeah, how about that? Either England cannot win in New England, or the witch doctor from Ghana really did curse Harry Kane. You see that? There's this guy who was doing like witchcraft or something in the stands during the Ghana match, the last one, and Ghana won or got a result. Did they tie 1-1? Anyway, they got a result, and he said he was going to curse Harry Kane. Or at least that's what was on social media. Who knows? It could have been AI, but be funny if he did, because Harry Kane, after Messi had 2, Mbappe had 2, Haaland had 2, Ronaldo had 2, Kane gets 0. Uh-oh. England. A little bit of trouble there. One thing to keep in mind here with the Nuggets offseason, the Giannis trade, as attention-grabbing as it is, as sexy as it is, does not really impact the Denver Nuggets unless they can end up with Jaylen Brown, right? So it doesn't really impact their day-to-day lives. Different side of the league in different conference, all that. The Randall trade last night does. One, because it's the team that for 2 of the last 3 years, the Denver Nuggets haven't been able to beat in the series. So it's significant when they just basically give away one of their players. But it's also significant because of the 2 other teams involved. The 2 other teams that were involved in the trade last night were the Chicago Bulls and the Brooklyn Nets. And the Bulls ended up taking on Nick Claxton, and the Nets got Julius Randle. Well, there's a report today that the Nets are now not going to pursue Austin Reeves because they landed Julius Randle. Why? Not because they got Julius Randle and then went, championship, we're good. They don't have any money. 2 of the teams that have been rumored all along to be potential dumping grounds for whatever bad contract the Denver Nuggets want to get rid of, or I guess I should say, I shouldn't say bad contracts. Cam Johnson is not a bad contract, but whatever contract they want to dump. I almost called them New Jersey. They haven't been New Jersey in years. Brooklyn may not be willing to take on a Cam Johnson, and Chicago may be less willing. So this grand plan, if it is indeed the Nuggets' plan to just shed salary, it's becoming more complicated, which is a good thing. You want the Nuggets to have no other choice than to have a team that is over the tax. You don't want them to just dump salary, because they would be worse this year than they were last year, and there would be no reason to think they're going to be better moving forward if they're just dumping players and getting nothing in return. So this is a good development. And it could also be a good development in the Peyton Watson pursuit, because it was the Lakers the Nets and the Bulls, I believe, were the most rumored teams for Peyton Watson because they're the only ones that have money. Now, I think the Lakers have like $52 million in cap space, so they could probably sign Austin Reeves and Peyton Watson if they so choose. But it's more Peyton Watson suitors that may be bowing out now, which could indicate that the Nuggets are real about keeping Peyton Watson. And I think that they did have the desire to keep Peyton Watson, but to me, it was only if they could get rid of Cam Johnson for nothing. And even then, if they really want to get under the tax, it would really have to be more than just getting rid of Cam Johnson. So I guess I never really doubted the Nuggets' desire to have Peyton Watson back. I just thought that they had to make other moves in order to keep him. Maybe this is a sign that other teams feel like the Nuggets are going to do what they can to keep Peyton Watson. And that could be a good thing or that could be a bad thing. It could be a bad thing if the Nuggets dump 2 players to be able to keep Peyton Watson so they don't have to go into the tax, or it could be good because they're like, hey, we can't dump our salaries here. Like we're kind of stuck, so we might as well go for it and keep Peyton Watson. As unlikely as that may be, it's a possibility at this point. So Chicago and Brooklyn being involved in that Julius Randle trade last night does have some significance and could affect the Denver Nuggets in what they want to do, both in shedding salary and in their plans as well, if reports are to be believed that they want to keep Peyton Watson. Draft's coming up in about 15 minutes. Nuggets on the clock at 26. They're going to have a lot of time to be able to do something. Could the Nuggets... I was seeing that the Hawks were really... aren't the Hawks at like 8? We're really looking to move their pick. Could you get a player? Let's say Dyson Daniels and the 8th pick for Jamal Murray. Money doesn't work. So you probably have to, I know that right off the top, but as the principles of the trade, is the 8th overall pick in this draft plus Dyson Daniels equal value for Jamal Murray? I would like it to be, but I don't know that it is, especially in this draft. Like, this draft isn't 26 players deep. It's not, but it's probably 8. You could probably get a pretty good player if you were able to trade into the top 10. And we've seen some rumors that the Nuggets are trying to move up. My question is where? Because if you're just going up to 23 or even 20, I don't know that. Is there that big of a difference if you're getting into the lottery or even if you're getting in the top 10? Now that's significant. Now that's interesting in a draft like this. But I make the money work how you can make the money work. But the principles, Dyson Daniels in the 8th pick for Jamal Murray, I think that'd be good. We'll see. Kind of thought that after the Giannis trade that a few other things would happen. But before the draft, it doesn't seem like much has. Which maybe the Jaylen Brown of it all is kind of holding everything up. And once that is done, then you'll see a flurry of moves. But we'll find out at the top of the hour. And whatever the Nuggets do end up doing, I'll be here tomorrow talking about it. What did I miss here? I don't think I missed. I think I got everything here that I wanted to cover. your dreams of landing Kyle Pitts in Denver are done. That was the other thing. Kyle Pitts signing an extension, 3 years, $54 million with the Atlanta Falcons. And Eklund was the name of the Sharks defenseman that Ottawa ended up getting. I thought they were going to take that 9th pick and try to get Jason Robertson from Dallas. But they got a defenseman, young, versatile defenseman instead to go to Ottawa. And they still have picks. So we'll see. The offseason is here. We had to wait, and we had to – not that the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Final weren't good. They were compelling. But once the Avs and the Nuggets get eliminated, we're kind of looking forward to the offseason. The offseason's here with the Kachuk trade in the NHL and the Giannis trade in the NBA, both going to the same market. How about that? What a coincidence. That is it for me. I want to thank Juan Tejada of the Switchbacks for joining me. Don't forget tomorrow night, Switchbacks hosting San Antonio, 6 p.m. Switchbacksfc.com is where you go to get your tickets. And I highly recommend that you do. Make sure you download the Extra Sports 1300 app and bring it with you. And Roland and I will be on the call starting at 5:30 tomorrow. Appreciate your patronage and the interaction. And whether you're watching the NBA draft, Panama and Croatia, enjoy your evening. Speaking of Panama, Croatia, perhaps they will be covered on this, our latest World Soccer update from Westwood One. Talk to you tomorrow.